Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are connected from, and welcome to Creative's Workshop. Another one of our workshops, of our 20 workshops, that is an initiative that we bring from All Dance International to each and one of our All Dancers. This is an initiative to help guide and give light to our different modalities and techniques we have in All Dance International. We have 24 different techniques, 45 different modalities. And this is a special invitation that we have for you to help you give light and new knowledge and different knowledge for all of your creative process of your competitive choreographies. I want to thank All Dance International for creating this spaces, and especially Maria Fernanda Castro, our general director, who makes this possible and who is always bringing new ideas and different elements that will help grow dance worldwide, and today, well, the industry of teaching in the dance industry alike. So this is a great opportunity to share, to learn together, and to improve all the little details that we can in order to have a better competitive experience. For All Dance International, this is a very important part of the competitive experience. It's for it to be positive, for it to be something that will help the dancers and the dance industry grow, as well as everybody that is a part of it. We enjoy this process very much because that is the way that we can also contribute to this process. My name is Sandra Correa. I'm Technical Director of All Dance International, and it's more than a pleasure to be here with you today. As we have been in the past workshops and the future workshops, because we're going to be here until April 25th. If you can't be here presently, well, maybe you're watching us through YouTube, and we really hope this information and all the information we bring to you will be helpful in your competitive process and experience. Well, today we bring with us a very special element that is going to help in this creative process in general, but especially in one of our techniques and modalities. For this, we are having in each one of our workshops very special guests that are going to be helping and that are going to be guiding us. These are very important part of our All Dance International jury staff. And today we have two of our jury staffs for this special modality in All Dance show. That's Fufo Rosario and Carlos Duque from Panama. They are not only great workshop artists, teachers, choreographers, dancers, but amazing human beings who love to share their knowledge, to love to help grow dancers with respect always, and are great part of our All Dance International judging team. So welcome, Fufo and Carlos Duque.
Hello, Sandra. Thank you. We are really, really happy to be here. I'm also happy to join Fufo today in the All Dance Show workshop, because this modality is really important to us. We always work together, all of our creations, and this modality in special let us create and give life to those histories and characters we all be seeing in movies and video games, and these popular characters, and this is the great about this modality. So yeah, we're really happy to be doing this today with you.
Perfect. Thank you. It's very, very important for us to share this opportunity with you, because All Dance Show is a modality that is part of a different technique where we have two different modalities, say, put together in one depending on your style. We have All Dance Open and All Dance Show. All Dance Open, we already saw it in one of our previous workshops. If you wish to go back, watch it, see every detail. But today we're here with the All Dance Show and these amazing experts that are going to share with us a lot of tips, a lot of info that is going to help in this process. So here, as I told you, we are going to see the All Dance Show. It's a wonderful but very, very tricky different modality that is going to be a very good experience in this part creation, and going to be able to take out all that creative process, all that imagination. And here today, we're going to share the information that we're all going to have as a baseline in order to be able to create those choreographies and be creative, all based on the same line. So without further ado, I leave you here with Carlos Duque, who is going to be sharing with us all this information. Remember, you can ask questions and stay in touch. here on our Zoom session, or if you're on our YouTube, leave in any comments you wish, and we will be happy to come back to you. So Carlos, welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, let's start with All Dance Show. As I said before, this is a really, really special modality. This modality will include the stagings that contain clear artistic characterizations and the development of characters defined during the choreography. This, as a tip, means that you need, depending on the style you're doing in the choreography, you need to make a character very specific. And as a tip, I want to say to all the choreographers that the energy that the character you're choosing needs to match the character of the dancer you're giving. So you need, I'm gonna give an example. If you're doing the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, which have like a really crazy energy and face expressions and body expressions, the character needs to be developed by a dancer that has this same energy, because the judges has a topic that is called authenticity of the character, and that really needs to be developed in the right way. And the characterizations, artistic scenic makeup, and or high visual impact choreographies are characteristics of these proposals. The wardrobe and shoes will be according to the scenic proposal. It must contain a minimum of 60% dance in the staging. This means that you could also incorporate in the routine some acting, some voice special effects in the mix, and other things that help you develop these characters. So also as notes, the choreography is inspired. Existing works of characters will not be considered plagiarism. There will be no penalty for plagiarism as long as the choreography does not exceed 45% similarity of the original. Originality will always be rated in choreographies. When completing your registration form, please indicate the specific style of your staging, because in this specific modality, you could incorporate diverse styles of dance. You could do hip hop, you can do urban styles, you can do jazz, because it's like a really open modality for styles.
Yes, thank you, Duque. Very, very true. This is a very special modality, as you can see. It incorporates a lot of elements, and as Duque shares with us, diverse different dance techniques can be included. So it is very important for us to know all this information in order to have a better competitive experience, and will the judges be completely prepared and the correct judges be assigned to each one of the choreographies. Now, our competitive process is very important for us, for it to be positive. And for this, we have designed not only the particulars of each one of the modalities and all the elements for it to be a fair competition for all the dancers involved, but we also have a lot of details in this competitive process and in the scoring process. Sorry, lack of words. Now, the first thing we're going to see of these elements is one, the level. The level of the dancers that I'm going to be sharing with you do not specifically refer to how many years the dancers have been training, how many competitive experiences or stage experiences they've had, but overall in the dance experience general and what we see on stage specifically. Because through the choreographies, we do not know certain details of how long the dancer may be preparing. If 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we can't see that. What we can see is what is in the choreography and how they are interpreting it. Now, this being said, we have 4 basic levels for these dancers that are going to be considered generally in all the modalities. And of course, according to these levels will be the expectation of the judges. I'll go to that a little bit later because Duque is going to be helping us with that. Now, for the general levels, as I was saying, we have 4 different levels: new all dancers, student level dancers, pre-professional, and professional dancers. What is a new all dancer, or what will we consider a new all dancer? New art dancer is a level where we can find dancers from 4 years old up to 14 years old, and these are just beginner dancers in dance overall. So we'll be seeing in the choreographies normally basic elements in the technical aspect. If they are already starting to turn, we know turns are one of the first elements we learn in dance. But if they are starting to learn some elements of turns, they will be simple turns and not double turns, not triples, but let's say the basics and the starting of the technique and the turns. If they're doing jumps, they'll be simple jumps, not jumps that include a spreading of 180 degrees of the legs. We'll see if they're doing acrobatic elements. That's one of the elements that we usually see included in these shows to generate the high impact that we were talking about. Well, that will be elements that should be also simple. The acrobatic elements with both hands on the floor or the whole body against the floor, not any aerial movements, not any back handsprings, or high impact acrobatic elements. These will be obviously simple elements, so the new all dancers have a very positive competitive experience against other new all dancers the same. Now, if the dancers are already, let's say, growing in that technical aspect and doing more difficult elements in the choreographies, well, that is perfect. But then we will be considering that student level dancers. This in student level dancers can be dancers from 6 years old up to any age. You feel the energy to still be on the stage, sharing your talent with us. But these dancers will not have any limitations in the technical elements they can include. You can be doing double turns, triple turns, 7 turns, high jumps, all the impact you want in the acrobatic elements, as long as you obviously keep it safe. But those elements will not have any restrictions in the student level. Now we have a different level that, let's say it's a combination. We have the student open level. The student open level is for the choreographies where we sometimes include student level dancers and new all dancers in the same performance. So this is something we sometimes include because sometimes new all dancers are taking class with some students, or we just wish to combine them in our choreography, no problem. So they will be considered the student open level. Now, what happens when the students are already growing and going to the next level? Maybe they're even student teachers, or they're part of a professional dance company, and they're projecting and taking dance, let's say, more seriously. They have more scenic experience, they're more confident on stage, and have a very high technical level in their performances. Well, for those students or high level students, let's say, that are 15 years up to 17 years old and are teachers, choreographers, maybe workshop artists, well, we will be considering them pre-professional dancers. When we're already sharing that information we have as dancers, we're taking it to the next level, and we have obviously more experience in the dance industry and of course in the confidence we have of ourselves as dancers. So these will be considered pre-professional dancers. Now, what happens if I'm a teacher, I'm a choreographer, but I'm over 17 years old, I'm 18 years old or over? Well, we will be considered professional dancers. For those directors, choreographers, and everybody who also teaches and also shares dance or is part of a professional dance company and is over 18 years old will be considered in the competitive aspect as a professional dancer. Remember, since in show we can include diverse techniques in dance, well, if I am professional in any technique, I will be considered professional in show regarding this. Now, if I am, let's say, over 18, but I do not teach, I am not a choreographer, but I am a very high level student, advanced student that I wish to compete against higher level, of course, students, well, you can choose voluntary to compete in a pre-professional level because your technical level may be able to compete here. What is important to take note that we cannot go back to student level once we compete in a pre-professional level. But we love to see that because, well, the idea when we are dancers and we are in this competitive experiences is to always look to go to the next and always go to the highest level we can. So if you are an advanced student or your students are very advanced dancers and have a lot of competitive experience, and you see that they are very talented dancers, they don't teach maybe because they don't have time or because for any reason, well, they can also be considered pre-professional dancers without any problem there. Now, what happens when we have choreographies that pre-professional and professional dancers dance alike in the same choreographic piece? Well, there's where we have the open pro level, where we can mix them in our choreographies without any problem. So that's why we have the open pro. And last but not least, we have our open level. This open is open level, open all levels, all ages, large groups, and open production. This is for these large productions that we normally or sometimes bring to stage, where sometimes we have new all dancers sharing the stage with professional or pre-professional dancers, students with pre-professionals. So here we can mix all the levels, all the ages, any way we wish to. And well, that will be one of the elements here. Large groups, open production for all those large productions we have to bring on stage. So those are the basic levels we have to divide the dancers for them to have a positive competitive experience. And new all dancers will not have to compete against student level dancers. Student level dancers will not have to compete with pre-professional dancers who have a different competitive experience than they do. And this way it will be a much more fair competitive experience for everybody. Now, according to this, obviously, the judges will also have different expectations from what they are expectant to see from the dancers on stage for the levels and for the choreographies. So here I want to ask Duque to give a little light on what it is that as judges you're looking for in each one of the levels, according, of course, to the ages as well, for the competition and for the choreographies for these dancers.
I think no matter the level, we're expecting in this modality to see defined characters and a very well worked script for the show, which is the main thing on Alden's show. But also for new dancers, we would like to see the specific styles according to the modality. And they could do like a low or mid-range movements for the style. For students, we would like to see mid-range movements for the styles, and also for pre-professional and professional, we would love them to see the styles hitting those markets or those standards according to the dance industry or the dance scene for the professional levels. We would love to see acrobatic movements. We would like to see impact figures or impact movements. So yeah, the show must be according to the level. As high is the level, as high should be the show.
Perfect. Yes, very important. And thank you very much. That is a very important information to have and to keep in mind always, because yes, that construction of the character and all these elements that are part of the all dance show will always be important and present. So yes, very, very well. Now, for the competitive experience, we have a lot of details that we have to keep in mind when we're doing our choreographic construction and creative process. Now, the modality is an important piece. Which level our dancers will be competing in and what level they have, that we are also going to be including in the creative process of our choreographies. Now, an important piece that we have to keep in mind is the scoring process as well. So what will the judges be looking for specifically in my piece? Now, for the scoring process, we have designed the scoring method here at All Dance International based on our principles, and of course, helping this experience to be more positive and help this process as a growth process for the dancers and the dance industry. We have assigned, and 3 judges will be responsible for this process, one being the modality judge, who can award a maximum of 70 points out of the maximum possible 100 points that we have in our scoring method in All Dance International. And additional to this, he or she will be giving a feedback to each one of the performances to also complement and help this growth. We have the next judge, that's the complimentary judge, who can award a maximum of 30 points of these 100 points. summing between them both 100, and will be scoring and be responsible for a specific criteria. Each one have their own criteria, their own different scores for each criteria, in order to decide how many points each one of the choreographies will have. And we have a third judge, that is the deductions judge, that will be doing some deductions in case they are required for the different criteria that we will also be seeing, and will to help keep this experience fair for every one of the dancers on stage. Now, as I told you before, each one of the criteria that these judges will be scoring or evaluating will have a different score each one. Now, depending on the score, the judges will have, let's say, an average score, that is the expected elements that we will be finding in each one of these choreographies and each one of the performers. Now, for each criteria, we have that average, and we can always go above average and of course go to those almost perfect scores where we can exceed the expectations of the jury. But sometimes in some criteria, well, we are above average. In some criteria, we may be still below average and have to work on certain aspects specifically. So this will help guide the dancers and guide the choreographers as well for their next competitive experience, so they know what aspects they need to improve in, and what aspects, well, we're already above average and are doing excellent. Now, this will help a lot when we receive our information after the competition, but first, for the creative process, we need to know what it is the judges will be looking for. Now we're going to see each one of the criteria that every one of the judges will be, let's say, scoring and being responsible for. Now, the modality judge, remember, he or she can give a maximum of 70 points of the 100. And at the right side of each one of the criteria, we will see the maximum points possible that he or she can award for this specific criteria. Now, this being said, we have the specific technique, where we have correct modality and technical level. In correct modality, well, what are we looking for? If you are dancing in an all dance show, well, all the little elements and details that Duque shared with us earlier should be present in order to have a good and almost perfect score. So every one of the details should be there. The character, the interpretation, what music we're using to do this interpretation, the costume, the wardrobe, all those little elements, and the makeup that will help us build and construct this choreography. And sometimes we're lacking some elements, and sometimes the elements that we have are specifically not enough for it to be considered a show, and maybe going into another modality. So that will have a lower score and have another effect that we'll see a little bit later on. But that's why we're here, and that's why you're also here, so you know what the elements are that are needed in a show to have the correct modality, and you can apply them in a correct way. Also, the technical level. The technical level, well, here, depending on the style of dance you incorporate in your choreography, will be expected. And of course, regarding the level of the dancers and the age. Now, that will be considered here for the technical level. We also have execution, where we will be seeing synchronization when it's 2 or more dancers, and skill when it's soloists will have the complete score. If not, well, if it's duos or more, it will be split in these 2 criteria. Now, the synchronization, well, of course, it's self-explanatory how the dancers are dancing as a group. They're dancing at the same time, they're very precise, or maybe they're not dancing at the same time, but it should be clear if it's designed to be this way and how they are interacting in the choreography. And the skill, well, the skill goes for everybody, and it's the ability that these dancers have to interpret the choreography and to interpret the technical elements in the choreography as well, and the execution of all the little details that are part of the choreography. The difficulty when we're talking about this other criteria will be divided into extraordinary movements and elements of risk. When we think about and when we hear elements of risk, normally our brain straight goes to acrobatic elements, goes to difficult elements that normally maybe seem risky because of its nature, but is not the only way of having risky elements in our choreography. Of course, if we include acrobatic elements, they will be considered here, but also difficult turns, let's say difficult jumps when they're required, different dynamics in the choreography, elements of control, high speed elements as well, are part of the creative process and part of the difficulty and extraordinary movements that we have. Every dance technique also has some elements that are more virtuous and more difficult than others, and will be, of course, contemplated and taken into account in this criteria. Now here, Duque, any information that may help guide or even complete this information for the choreographers that are here watching?
Just to add a little bit, when you are choreographing an old dance show, it's important that knowing these criteria for modality, you as a choreographer also watch the routine and try to, give scores to know if you're gonna hit the 10 points for the correct modality, which is something really important to know. And also try to not think of skills as a dance techniques, because the skills we're talking more as strength, sharpness, fluidness, precision, the skills that make you as a dancer, no matter what style or technique are you dancing. So yes, just to give those tips or feedback on these topics.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Duque. Yes, I think this is very helpful for all of the choreographers as well. Now, these are the first criteria that we will be seeing, but not the only ones. The modality judge is also going to be responsible for, let's say, scoring the musicality. Here in the musicality, we have divided it in two different criteria. The musical interpretation, or beat, that will be considered the use of the music in the choreography by the dancers, and of course also by the choreographer as it was designed, and how that music is interpreted and used in the choreography. And apart, we have the music that is the correct music for the performance, for the modality, and of course, when we have edited music, that it has a correct and clear addition on the presentation. So here we can see that both elements are important and equally important, and they will be scored individually. Also, the choreography. In the choreography, we're going to be scoring and evaluating costume and complexity. Here, costume is a very important detail and will have a very important concept, because the costume in the choreography here, especially in all dance show, is one of the main elements that should be present, because that will add to that characterization, that will add to that that character that we all are building in order for it to be considered a show. So here the costume is going to be a very important part to take into account, and the judges will be very attend to this. Now, also the complexity. We already talked about the difficult elements and the let's say the high risk elements, but here when we're talking about complexity, we're talking about the complexity of the choreography as a whole, as the composition of the choreography in all of its aspects. So that will also taken into account here. Being and keeping in mind that in show, the choreography has a complexity by itself if we do obviously incorporate all the elements that are required for this modality, because that is one of the more complex elements that has all dance show. It is very complex because it has a lot of elements that we have to keep in mind for it to be considered not only a show, but obviously a great show. That is what we want to create in all our pieces. And last but not least, creativity. When we're talking about creativity, we're talking and we're dividing into two different items. The creativity as a whole is how we use all these little details and all the elements, because we all have, let's say, the same thread, what we're sewing with, and how and what we do with that thread and what we're building is going to be very different and unique one from another, or that is what obviously we want as creative artists, for it to be unique, for it to be very special. And of course, depending on the dancers we have, the theme that we choose, well, that will give a different result. And we also have entertainment that is going to be a very important part, because this creative process, well, the ideas, all the elements we include, make it entertaining, not only for the audience, that of course is important, but also for the dancers that are interpreting these characters. And if they are enjoying their performance, well, it's more likely that we will enjoy it with them. So here the entertainment is going to be a very important piece. Part of this entertainment is, let's say, responsibility of the dancers who are taking it to the stage, but also part is responsibility of the choreographers. You as choreographers, what elements you include in your choreography that give it that entertaining, that make it more dynamic, that make it special. And that is where this that creative process comes into hand, and where Duque, who is expert in this, can also help us and give us some tips about these aspects.
Sure. In musicality, it's really important that in all dance show, we're going to be incorporating these voice effects in the mashup or in the mix, and these special effects. So we need to just not dance on beat, but to be able to also dance to these effects, and also our face and our mouth should go along with these voice effects that we're putting into our mix, you know. So these three scores work together to achieve that creativity score that we need to have. And this is a really important and interesting score, the creativity one, because in most of the movies, we don't see these characters dancing. So you need to picture, like, for example, we're doing Voldemort. You don't see Voldemort doing like a jazz. So that's interesting to see how a dancer or how a choreographer is working Voldemort into a jazz or into a voguing or into, you know, any style you're choosing to do. That it's creative at itself, you know, putting those characters to dance, and how you do it, it's gonna give you those 10 points in score. So these three musicality, choreography, costume, complexity, and creativity go along to achieve those 10 points in score in each of these topics.
Yes, that's very important, because yes, that is one of the most difficult things, I think, because you have to visualize what that character and how you're going to portray it on stage. And of course, the dancers have to visualize that as well. So it's two different complex processes there, but that is the interesting and the beauty of this modality in itself. So yes, very, very important. And that is a tricky part of this process. So there you have new things to think about, to keep in mind, and well, of course, to include in your creative process. Now, those are the criteria that the modality judge is going to be scoring. Now, there's another element that he or she is going to be responsible for, and it's regarding this element of creativity as well. Now, when we're talking about creativity, we're talking about new, innovative, unique. So here comes in the idea of intellectual property. This is when we take something that is not ours, creative process, and let's say we take it and put it as our own. Remember here in show, Duque said we had a very, let's say, a different concept a little bit about intellectual property, and we can take at least 45% of elements of other, let's say, creations that may be inspiring us without it being considered a plagiarism. Now, here in intellectual property, nonetheless, it is important to consider that we should be, well, of course, creative and unique, and be inspired by those elements. But as we make it our own and make it different, well, that will give it also not only better score in creativity, but also maybe not take it to the point where we may go over that 45% and maybe presenting a choreography that has already been built by somebody else and it presenting it as our own. So it is important to keep in mind that we should be inspired by all these elements, especially for all dance show that we're interpreting a character, but it will, as much as you can make it your own and make it different and make it unique, well, you'll have better scores and of course have a better chances avoiding any possibility of intellectual property. This is to respect all our work as artists, you as a choreographer, and the choreographers that have come before us or even contemporary to us who do amazing work and inspire us. And that is amazing to see. So for respect of their work, also, let's use it as that, as inspiration. Now, we already told you all the criteria the modality judge is going to be, let's say, responsible for. Now let's see the criteria the complementary judge is going to be responsible for. Now the complementary judge has those other 30 points that we can give from the 100 points maximum. Now in the complementary judge, well, we're going to be seeing the stage use, that will be divided in 4 different criteria: space, formations, levels, and transitions. Now, when we're seeing each one of these aspects, or the idea is to see that we are including them and how. When we're talking about the space, it is about how we use the space, not only if we fill a space, because I've said this, I think, every workshop. So if you've heard more than one, or you've been here more than one, I'm sorry, because I sound like a broken record. But when we have a choreography, let's say with 30, 40, even 50 dancers on stage, it is inevitable for it to look full. I think it's harder for it to not look full when we have so many dancers on stage. But the idea is how we use the space, how we transit through it, will be the use of the space. The formations is the different, let's say, different elements that we include that do different shapes, different forms on stage, that can go from simple forms like circles, lines, diagonals, to more complex as zigzags, as symmetrical, asymmetrical formations, pyramids, so many different elements that, well, are included in that creative process. One of the things that is, well, maybe important or helpful to keep in mind, especially for these formations, is that most of the times the formations can help us reinforce a concept or reinforce an idea or an impact that we want to create in our choreography. So study what formations, what it is you want to generate in some elements in your choreography, and use them to your advantage to help create these effects. Also, the use of levels. High, middle, and low levels are the levels we normally use in dance, and will help give it different dynamics and different aspects also in the choreography. So keep this in mind as well. Now, when we're talking about transitions, we're talking about all these put together, but especially how we put them together. How we go from point A to point B, how we go from our circle to our line, how we go from our high level to our low level. Do we just fall to the floor? Do we go down? How do we go from one point to the other? Are we walking? Are we dancing? Are we running? Are we just moving without any intention? So that is what will be considered here in transitions. For it to have, of course, transitions, but how we use them in our choreography is going to be important. In the aspect and the criteria of image, this is going to be a very important criteria here in All Dance Show. And we're talking about the creativity of this image, how we're using all the elements that compose that image for the character, for the creation of the choreography. The accessories, when used, if used, how they're used, and why they're used, are going to be things to be taken into account. Because our characters, not all of them have use of accessories, not all of them need it, but some not only need it, but it will help us reinforce that the character or what we're trying to say, or maybe the story the character is bringing with us. The makeup, here makeup is also a very important part, as Duke already shared. It's a very important element that's going to have a high impact in the show. And here, all put together, the visual aesthetics. This comes from all of the part of the image, the movement, the accessories, how we use the stage, every aspect from the dancer goes on stage, the visual aesthetics to obviously the choreography, the theme, and everything is going to be put together in one. But here, I think Duque has a little more insight and can help a little more because this is his area expertise.
Yeah, well, as you said, Sandra, for stage use, we need to go from point A to point B We're also to point C, D, E, F, G. We need to go everywhere on the stage. Please use the stage. This is really important because in order for a judge to give a score for the stage use, if you stay in the same place, a judge can do a score for formations and levels, but there is no way to give a score for transitions or space if the dancer is not moving through the whole stage. So this is really important to have in mind. All the time use the space. And in image, image is audience show. This is a score that it's the name of the modality. So creativity, accessories, makeup, visual aesthetics, this is all audience show. We need to hit those scores in order to be doing a proper audience show. And just have in mind that sometimes the costume can also be an accessory. The makeup maybe be an accessory sometimes, depending on how big your makeup is and what are you using on your makeup. So be creative on what you are using and what you're wearing, because that's how you get those scores, being creative and being original on your proposal.
Yes, thank you very much. Very, very important. Those are very helpful tips. And yes, here, as you say, image and show go together and are basically here synonyms. So they're one and the same in this concept. So thank you very much. But these are not the only criteria that the complimentary judge will be responsible for. He or she will also be scoring the performance projection. That is also very important in dance in general, and here in All Dance Show, very important as well. Where we can see the performance projection is in 4 different criteria as well. Gestuality, authenticity of character, Duke already talked about this a little bit earlier, force of movement and interpretation. Now, gestuality, speaking of all the gestures and all the expressions we have in order to communicate. This going from the normal and facial expressions that we normally are just relying on for this gestuality, but here also comes into hand all the gestures we have with our bodies, from how our body speaks for us, our arms, our legs, from the posture we have when we walk, our eyes, every piece of our body speaks, and especially when we're on stage and interpreting a different character. Now, the authenticity of the character, that is very important here because it's how you are actually showing the character and convincing everybody that is watching that you are that character, and all the little details come into work together, from the makeup, from how we move, from what we're doing, from the steps, and with the elements that we choose in our choreography. That was Duque was saying earlier, that's one of the difficult parts of being here, because yes, if you're Voldemort, you can be dressed as Voldemort, have the makeup, but if you are not interpreting the character and the movements are not actually believable, then are we actually Voldemort, or are we just dressed as Voldemort? So here it's going to be that tricky part that Duque was sharing with us a little bit earlier. Here also we have force of movement. When we read the word force, we're normally going straight and thinking to force is strength. And we think about a lot of strength. But when we speak about force of movement, is the quality of the movement. And here we require different strengths in the movement. Sometimes we require soft movement. Sometimes we require sharp. So it's a different force. So what is the element? What is the movement we're going to create? And what quality of movement? So what force is supposed to be applied to generate that effect and that quality in the movement? So here, that is what we're going to see. And of course, the clarity of the movement, well, will be, of course, a more clear depending on the correct energy we apply to it. And last but not least in this criteria, the interpretation. Here goes a little bit all of these elements, and I think also summed up with some of the ones we saw before, because the interpretation goes along with the technique we're using, the makeup, the costume, the way we move, the gestuality, and that making it believable and interpreting the character as a whole in our performance, and of course the story we're portraying in our choreography. So these all work together and are very important in the construction of that performance. And last but not least is the public response. Here is where we have, let's say, an invited judges on our judging panel. Who are those judges? Everyone in the audience, in the public, everyone that is there supporting the dancers. They can be family, friends, neighbors. They can be just other competitors who are there watching, because as a dance family and as the all dance family, that's the idea, to support each other and to support dance. As dancers, we dance because we enjoy dance. We enjoy dance because it also helps us express. But it is very important, especially for these younger dancers, to feel that support of the audience. And of course, well, sharing this talent and what we love with the audience is part of what makes it special. So this is our way in All Dance to inspire all of you and to help all these dancers to be supported. And of course, for you guys to be there, presence with the physical presence on every one of the performance. If we're through Zoom, they're on the Zoom and chat and comment and be with them and let them feel that support as dancers, as an artist, because that is what's going to help them grow and also always be more inspired to do their very best on stage. So here, everybody comes in, and of course, it's a responsibility of everybody also to be able to see all the elements and enjoy the performance, for this to be also important for the dancers. So these are the other criterias, and this very important. Maybe Duque has some little more insight of the performance projection. That is a very important piece here in All Dance Show.
Well, just as image, performance projection, it's all about All Dance Show. We need to develop those characters and work our projections so we can be that character and we can tell the right story we need to tell. So it's simple as that. And as of for public response, this is a really easy score to get on All Dance Show, because let's say you're doing Harley Quinn, and when you go out as a Harley Quinn, you know there's gonna be kids in the public or teenage in the public who say, "Hey mom, look, Harley Quinn," or any other character, because mostly we're choosing really popular characters here, and that's like a really way to have the public or the audience, sorry, to be aware of what you are gonna do. So hitting that score, it's really easy. You just need to be doing the right projection, the right styles, and the right image, so everybody can go along with you on this show.
Yes, very important. Thank you very much. That is very important things to keep in mind and to always think about when we're doing our creative process, and of course, when we're enjoying our competitive experience. Now, we saw all the criterias that can add points. That's what we normally want. We want to add as much points as we can in each of the performances, and we saw the criteria. Now, what we also want to avoid is getting any of those points taken away. Now, that is the judge of deduction that will be responsible for this. So don't get worried if you see a lot of criterias here in deductions. Be worried if you were not here present, because the deductions criterias are not criteria that are always going to have a score. The idea is for us to avoid any of these little details so we can have more points given and less points taken out from our score. Now, if you are here and you're with us, well, that will give you an advantage just by itself, because you are going to be aware of those elements that you should not include in your performance, and that will be a competitive advantage there by itself. Of course, if you apply them, because we can hear them, and if we don't apply them, well, we did nothing. But I don't think you're here and you're not going to apply them, so let's continue with that. Now here, wrong modality is one of it's the first criteria that we're going to see, and it's one of the most important ones because, as you can see, it's a high deduction. This being said, we went over from the beginning, we were talking about all the details that are important to keep in mind when we're talking about this specific modality that here we're regarding today, that's All Dance Show. Now, when we have a wrong modality, it's because not only it didn't comply the enough elements, but actually went into another modality. So sometimes we lack a little bit of the building of the character, or maybe the makeup is not so artistic, but we see the character, we see the story. But here, when we're talking about wrong modality, is because it doesn't belong in all dance show, it belongs in another modality altogether. So that's very important. So that's why all the information we gave before is going to be a very strong element here that will avoid this deduction. We also have wrong division. The wrong division, when we talk about division, we spoke about that in our first creative workshop where we saw all the rules, all the divisions, and every detail. We didn't go through that today, so if you need to see that, it's in our organic code, or you can go back on our YouTube channel, All Dance International Official, and see our first workshop and get all the info you need on this. But the wrong division is about the age of the dancers. This is for all the 5-year-olds to compete against 5-year-olds and not have to compete 5-year-olds against 10-year-olds unless we have 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds in the same choreography and other dancers as well. So this is to make it, as always, as I've been saying before, to make the competition a fair environment for all the dancers. Now, just choose the correct division for your dancers. If you have various ages, see what division will include the ages of your dancers in the best way so they have the correct division in their competition. Wrong level. As you can see, this is not only a high, but is the highest deduction we have on all our deductions in All Dance International. And this is specifically designed not in order to punish the dancers, but in order to exalt and respect the dancers. Because the idea is for it to be, as I was saying, always a positive competitive experience. And it will not be a positive competitive experience if, let's say, I'm a new all dancer, I just beginning in dance in general, and I have to compete against the student level dancer that is already doing difficult turns, difficult jumps, that already has a different experience and has a different technical level than I do. The same, if I'm a student level dancer, but I have to compete against a professional dancer, it's not going to be a positive experience for me because I have no chance whatsoever of winning because, of course, it's not my level. So this is in order for that to be a positive competitive experience for everybody. New all dancers against new all dancers, students against students, professionals against professionals, and so forth. Another one will be late arrival to stage. Here, I'm going to take the time to express one element first. When we do our registration in All Dance International, well, there's a lot of information that is going to be asked from us for each one of the choreographies, but also when the registration is over, we're going to be sent a preliminary program or schedule. Here, there's a lot of information that's going to be there and that we, as responsibles, as directors, as choreographers, should check that everything is correct. From the name of our choreography, the name of our dancers, the amount of dancers on stage, and one information that will be there important is an approximate time that our dancers will be performing at. Remember, this is approximate because sometimes the event can go maybe be a little behind schedule or be before schedule in some cases even. So here, we always ask the dancers and the performers to be there 2 hours in advance. So we're not there on time, but we're there early with time enough to do all this makeup, all these hairdos, get dressed, get warmed up, so we don't have any injuries when we're dancing as well. So here, when we are supposed to be at backstage, we should be at backstage, and our performance is to be on stage, it should be on stage. Now, when we get our schedule and our preliminary program, check that you have enough time. If you have several choreographies to do your makeup, to be ready. Of course, sometimes we want 3 hours. That's not going to be possible, but in the limits that are possible, let us know that so we can obviously arrange the schedule so it helps and it is possible for the dancers to be prepared and ready. Also, false routine start. This meaning when we are on stage ready to dance and the music plays and the dancers move, then we will consider the routine to have started. If by any chance, I don't know, maybe it wasn't the correct music that's playing or something, and they stop and have to repeat the choreography, that will be considered a false routine start. Now, what happens if it's not my music? Well, simple. Let's train the dancers as part of our artistic experience that if it's not my music, I do not move. If it's not their music, they stay there. There, no problem, no deduction. The correct music will be put for them, and that's it. Sometimes we're on Zoom, and the people that are playing the music for us maybe our siblings, our parents, and that is not what they're used to do. So maybe they put the wrong music, but it applies the same. So dancers, don't move, be there ready, and that will help avoid this deduction. Forbidden elements. When we're talking about forbidden elements, we're not talking about forbidden elements just for show. We're talking about forbidden elements in general for the stagings, because here is what we will be considered forbidden elements are any elements that can endanger the stage or the well-being of any one of our dancers. This meaning the use of liquids, of any element that are greasy that can endanger the stage, elements like fire, any element that can put in danger the stage for this dancer, other dancers, or other dancers in general will be considered a forbidden element. Also, elements like feathers that fall off easily and will create a lot of feathers on stage will be considered also forbidden elements. Excess use of acrobatic or gymnastic elements. Here in All Dance Show, we don't have a maximum of acrobatic elements that can be used in the choreography, but in some modalities there are a maximum or a minimum that should be used. But here, obviously, remember 60% of the choreography should be dance, so that would be only keeping that in mind. Makeup, body paint, inappropriate, obscene, or offensive clothing. Here, well, the clothing will be according to your character. So what would be inappropriate? Inappropriate, obscene, or offensive that will make maybe obscene, that will not be adequate for our public, that our audience is family-based audience worldwide from all cultures of the world. Body painting, even though it's a beautiful form of art, is not specifically designed for our family environment. And normally body paint is also an oil-based paint that is not very safe for the competitors. And well, that would be also regarding the clothing, should be aware of the age of the dancers in order to see what they are going to be wearing and not be too provocative of clothing in this sense. Also, we have poorly executed elements. Now, the poorly executed elements will be all those technical elements that we include in our choreography that should be correctly executed. No matter the technique where they come from, if they're acrobatic elements, they should have a correct execution. If they're from hip hop, if they're from ballet, if they're from jazz, no matter where they're from, they should have obviously a correct execution in the choreography. Any tripping or falling, when we stumble, when we trip, when we almost don't land an exercise or a movement, well, it could have a deduction of 0.5. If we could not save that exercise and we fall and could not complete it, well, it will have a deduction of 1 point in this case. Also, throwing items to the public or to the audience. When we have any element and we wish sometimes to create an effect by throwing it, well, that is fine. Just do not throw it to the audience or to the front. Throw it to the air, to the sides, to the back, I don't know, but not to the audience. If you want to take something off and you can leave it on stage, no problem. Just do not throw it forward. Also, inappropriate language or music. Here, when we're talking about inappropriate language or music, will be a music that is offensive, maybe have bad words, maybe is offensive to any race, gender, sexual orientation, so or maybe have a high sexual content. So here, keep your music, well, appropriate for all ages, for all cultures, and very respectful of all our differences. And the same for inappropriate movements. These inappropriate movements will be considered sexualized movements that are not appropriate for our family audience. Now, inappropriate movements will be considered the movements that are highly sexualized, One thing is to be sensual, of course, and regarding the age of the dancers also, but another is to sexualize the movements and sexualize dance. Here we're promoting, of course, a family environment and the technical aspects of dance. So have a little account on these elements. As you can see, these are not the only deduction criteria. We're going to see more in a bit. But as you can see, most of the deductions are avoidable. More than 90% of the deductions you can avoid beforehand. The deductions that we cannot foresee and that can be just things that happen on stage that we cannot foresee, if you take the chance and you take the time to look, are the lowest deductions in the scoring sheet. Because, of course, there are things that we want to take care of, but sometimes we can't avoid. They will have an effect, but a less, let's say, effect on the score of the dancers. But the ones that we can foresee are the ones that have the highest, so that's responsibility of everybody. Here, Duque, do you have anything you would like to add, compliment for the choreographers?
Sure. So there is two things I love about deductions. The first one is that as a choreographer and not as a judge, as a choreographer, I always choreograph thinking on the deduction judge, not on the modality or complementary judges, because the rules are the rules. You can't change the rules, but what can change is how the deduction judge is going to see your choreography or to see your routine. So you need to be really careful and really aware of these deductions when you are watching like your whole choreography. When it's all put together, you need to sit as a deduction judge, even if you're a choreographer, and see if you hit any of these deductions, because you may thinking you're gonna get a 100 score, but if you're in a wrong modality, a wrong level, or if you can prevent any of those things to happen, that's what you need to be aware. Also, please don't throw things to the public or the audience, especially because sometimes the judges are in the first row and you can throw things to the judges and they are not going to be able to see your choreography. And also in this inappropriate language or music deduction, sometimes we think that the words are not inappropriate, but the context of the whole sentence is sending a really, really bad message, even if the words are okay. So you need to be really, really aware of the whole context of the sentences. And also, if you're using a language that it's not your first language, for example, I use Spanish as my main language, and I've been caught myself using Brazilian funk, and I'm like using the song, and I'm like, this sounds really good. Maybe this word sounds silly. It's not something bad, but when I use the translate in Google, I found myself reading really bad things in a language that it's not my language. So I would strongly recommend to, if you're using another language, look for the whole lyrics and the whole translation, so you can be aware that maybe those judges are going to know that you're using something bad in that music. So yeah, for these deductions, this is pretty much my tips. Maybe in the next ones, we'll see some more.
Thank you. Very, very important. Very, very helpful tips actually there that we can see. And for example, what Lucas says and what you do about looking at your choreography as a deduction judge, it's so useful. And also if you look at that as a modality judge, as a complementary judge, and you already have the information, you're not going to know the exact score, but you know where you're not even taking that into account, or a deduction where you have a physical deduction that, yes, because sometimes you expect the best score, but you're in the wrong modality, or yes, you're in the wrong level. And that is something that is not only going to affect you and your score, but the dancers that work so hard also in the choreographies. And it's a shame mostly to do these deductions, but it is fair because you guys that are here taking the time and the responsibility to do this, you deserve also the respect for that. So yes. Now,
yeah, because sometimes it's not just sad for the dancers and the choreographers to see a -10 points deduction, but also for the judges who are really enjoying a choreography, but they had to do that deduction. It's the rules.
Yes, it's very, very sad. And I have to be a lot of times deduction, and it breaks my heart sometimes to do some deductions, but I know it's fair and I know why it's designed. So we do it, but we also, that's why we design these spaces. So the less we have to do these deductions, the better for the dancers, for us, and for the dance industry and the growth. So yes. Now, let's go over the last criteria of deduction. Now, first, accidents or falls of clothing. That would be elements, details, accessories, things we have on our costume, our hairpiece, any prop we may have in our hand or on our body that may fall. So this we can prevent sometimes. Sometimes it's out of our control, but we can prevent putting on good hair pieces, sewing our things to our costume, rehearsing with the elements that we need in order to avoid as much as possible we can these accidents. And well, these will be 0.5 for each time it happens. Damaged or untidy clothing. Here, our personal presentation is going to be an important part of our our presentation as dancers, and we go on stage, and every detail, the more details we have, will make it obviously a more positive and better image. So here, if our stockings are torn, but it's not the aspect we're looking for, because sometimes we can have them torn because that's how it should be, and that should be obvious. If our hair is untidy, if our clothes, if we have our underwear visible, if we have our shoelaces untied, if we're even chewing gum, that is not an appropriate image for a dancer on stage, and can also cause a danger if we let it fall, or even a trip, or even get stuck in our, for so many reasons, we should not be chewing gum on stage, for example. And all these little elements. Another thing that sometimes we see on stage with the untidy clothing is that everybody is perfect in their costume. These costumes are not cheap. We have an investment in these costumes, and then everybody goes on and somebody has a necklace, and the other one has a different necklace. They have them out, sometimes in, and that's not part of the costume, and that is clear when we see that. So it's just being untidy with the little details. So keep those little things in mind for your costumes. Choreography inappropriate to division. This just means keep your choreography age appropriate. Also, altisonance at the start, end, or middle of the routine. Here, what we're talking about is in the choreography, the music, or by the dancers, should not be any expressions of euphoria that might create in the public or the audience some type of arousal, other than what the dance and the energy in the dance and the choreographic elements can provoke. That is completely what we're looking for, but not through the verbal expressions or the use of the name of the studio, the name of the crew in the music, in the choreography, or by the dancers. That is what we are not looking for. The energy transmitted through the choreography and generate that energy through the movements, that is what we are looking for. Also, left elements on stage. This means whatever goes on stage with us should leave stage with us, because we put it on the stage and because we're not using it, or maybe because it fell off. So everything that goes on with us should leave the stage with us. So practice that also, because sometimes we forget. We're so concentrated in every other element that especially the younger students forget that they had a hat on and they left it on the floor, or that it fell off and didn't pick it up. So that's also part of our responsibility as choreographers, as part of their formation as students. Use of scenery. Now, you can see this is a high one also, because use of scenery, we expect in all dance for the story and all the elements be told by the choreography, by the costume, by the makeup, and by what we are creating as artists, not by physical elements that are there just to support the idea or just say to look pretty. I'm going to use the same example I used earlier. For example, we're doing a choreography based on maybe aerial. So we're in the sea, we have Ariel, we have Flounder, we have, I don't know, Sebastian, but we also have, and we brought onto stage, let's say, an element of of corals. So we brought the corals on stage so we can see that you're underwater and they're just there to look pretty. Well, that is scenery. We already understood your aerial. We already understood your underwater because flounder does not live above water. And you can do that through your makeup. You can do that through your movements, how you're moving underwater. It's through so many elements. Now, when can I use elements that will be considered correct and not scenery? Well, let's say we brought that same element on stage, but it's not there to look pretty. We use it as in the choreography. We move it. We use it to be around, maybe to sit on it, maybe to generate different movements, but they're part of the choreography, not just there on stage. Okay, they're indispensable part of the choreography and should be used in at least 30% of the choreography and brought on and off stage by the dancers that are going to be using it in the performance. Now that would be considered a prop. If it's just there to look pretty, or we just use it at the beginning and never use it again, well, then it's going to be considered scenery. Let's say flounder is hidden behind that element and goes out and starts dancing, and that's it. That will be considered scenery. And as you can see, it has a high deduction. So if it's not part of the choreography, don't go through the trouble of taking it to the place. You don't need it in order to tell your story. You don't need it for us to understand your concept and your characters. Also, fans, public, or audience obstructing the judgment. This will just mean that when the audience is there supporting the dancers, do it in a respectful manner. You can be all the loud you want before and after the choreography. During the choreography, you can applaud. You can, of course, celebrate the elements of the dancers, but in a way where we can still value the music, the dancers do not lose concentration, and everybody can enjoy the performance. Getting up, dropping off, or jumping off stage. Now here, when we get on and off stage, it should be through where it's indicated to do so safely in each one of the events, and not jump off the stage forward to the side or back in any way, only through the channels that are designed to do so. Also, routine time. Okay, this is an important one. We went more in detail in our first workshop, so you know this, but every choreography, depending on the subdivision, that means how many dancers are on stage, has a maximum choreographic time that is allowed for each choreography, and we all have the same time. Now, let's say we have a solo, duo, or trio. This means we have the possibility of a maximum choreography lasting 2 minutes. If our choreography lasts 1 minute and a half, no problem. 1 minute 50, no problem. 2 minutes, okay. 2:02, okay. 2:05, deduction of 3 points. 3 points can be the difference between first place, second place, and sometimes not even being in the top 3. So we can avoid it so easily. So just see how much time you have and what you are going to use so you don't exceed this choreographic time. Now, what happens if our choreography lasts, or the music is 2:04? Now, technically, we do not have a deduction, but being a very important part here, we are running a very high risk. Why? The choreographic time is taken from the first movement or sound and is stopped at the last movement or sound. This means my music may last 2:04, but what happens if the dancers take 1 more second to get to their final pose, or even 2 to get off stage? This means that instead of 2:04, it's actually 2:05, 2:06. We have a deduction. So going so to the board, so to the limits there, it's not very advisable. So I strongly advise not to go so far to the borders of 2:04, 2:03 tops, and that's it. If you need more time, go to our rules, see the organic code, how you can maybe acquire additional time if absolutely needed, because this is just more time for the dancers to get tired and to be more exhausted on stage, and we don't actually need it in order to enjoy a performance completely by the dancers. Okay, also intellectual property, we already went through that with the modality judge. It will just be reflected here on the deduction sheet. Also, regulation infringement, any infringement of any of our rules that may not allow the event or the competition to run smoothly or endanger any other dancers or harm any other dancers in any other way can be complied into a deduction. So just take care of all the details that can imply this. Also, an increase in unreported dancers. As last but not least, when we do our registration, remember the preliminary schedule, a program I told you you would be receiving? Well, there you can see how many dancers are reported in your choreography. See if the correct amount of dancers is reported there, and if not, well, inform it on time through the correct channels. That would be email or maybe WhatsApp, depending on the channels you are using for your registrations. This will allow the corrections, if need so, to be made. And if not, well, let's say I registered 5 dancers. 5 dancers are on my sheet, but 6 dancers are on stage. We'll have 5-point deduction for each dancer that is going to be on stage additional. So it's something easily avoided. Just check and correct if necessary. What happens if less dancers are on stage? Let's say I registered 5 dancers, 1 for any reason, it could not dance, could not perform, only 4 are on stage. That will not have a negative effect on your score. Nonetheless, we do ask you to communicate on time beforehand so we are aware of this information. And where could it be affect negatively? Let's say we have the 5 dancers registered, but instead of 1 not dancing, 2 do not dance. That means we have 3 dancers on stage. But 5 dancers is a small group, and 3 dancers is a trio. So trios should be dancing with trios. This will have a negative effect. If you guys communicate and time with us, we can help you and we can look for a way to solve this problem so the dancers will not be affected by this. So it's an important thing to keep in mind, and all these little details. As you can see, there's a lot, but most of them can be avoided just by applying the knowledge you are acquiring today. So here, Duque, any more tips, information that can help out these choreographers?
Well, I just want to say that I love sitting next to Sandra or Paola Diaz, which are mostly the deduction judges. And trust me, they count each dancer on stage. They do count every time. Even if they need help, they will put all the judges table to count all the dancers. So be aware on that. And I'm sorry, Sandra, if you already mentioned this in previous workshops. I do know this, but I want this to be clear for everyone. But there is deductions if the choreographer helps the dancers on stage, if he goes or she goes with the dancer on stage, or if somebody else who is not dancing goes on stage to help with a prop or preparing anything. And in which deduction does this comes in?
Okay, it's never too much. If I said it in another workshop, well, the people here may not have watched that workshop, so no problem. Yes, remember I told you that if we are using any elements on stage, it should be brought on by the dancers, not by anybody else. And even when we're bringing dancers on stage, they should go on by themselves, as Duque says. So that would be a regulation infringement because it's not allowed for that to happen or occur. And yes, very important and a very positive add there to the information.
Yeah, because sometimes I have seen choreographers helping little kids when they're competing to start on the right place and stuff, and it's really important to have that in mind. And also, to add something else, we need as choreographers to prevent these deductions, but the sad part is that sometimes these deductions are not reflected on our work as a choreographer. And I'm talking specifically, sorry, in the costumes or attires. Maybe the choreographers are not the ones sewing the costumes, but we have that work of seeing that it really is well sewn, that everything is well put together to prevent that anything, you know, breaks from your costume or fall off. That is your job. Maybe you didn't sew it, maybe you didn't, you know, glue it, but it's your job that the dancer is well put together before and after it goes on the stage. So yes, try to prevent any of these deductions, especially on props, on attires, on things that you didn't make yourself, but it's your job that if it goes on the stage, it's under your supervision. So keep that in mind.
Yes, important also for it to be comfortable for the dancers, because sometimes we see the whole choreography dancers fixing their clothes, fidgeting around because they're not comfortable in their clothes or because it's falling off. So yes, it's responsibility of every choreographer to supervise that, or to assign somebody to be there sewing whatever element is falling off, or the parents, or teaching even the students to take care of themselves, because of course we're educating dancers and artists that are also going to be our future choreographers and are going to be there. So we're setting the example for that. So very, very important there. Also, thank you very much, Duque. So yes, these are the tips, the elements that you guys are going to need and that are going to be useful for your creative process in your competitive choreographies. We actually, and I know I don't just speak for myself, we hope this has been a very positive experience for all of you, that you are here with us live or on YouTube and our official channel. Remember to subscribe. This is our Modality of All Dance show. Today we had a Fufo, that is one of our judges, and the Carlos Duque, that is here with the English phase of our workshop, with so much dedication, love, and helping every one of us grow. So it has been a great pleasure and honor, and thank you very much, All Dance, for making this possible, and you, Duque, for being and sharing this information with us.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you for all the time and work you have put into these workshops. I am really sure that everybody it's watching them and it's really learning from all of this. And to all the old dancers and choreographers, remember to stick by the rules, but make it creative, okay? Stick by the rules, but make it creative. That's what's gonna make you go to the top.
Very, very true. Rules are designed to avoid chaos, to have everything in order. But yes, the creative process, that originality, that imagination, that is unique. Those don't have the rules. That imagination is yours, and use it freely, maintaining inside the order of the rules. So remember, we're here until April 25th with so much information to share with you. Tomorrow, we're with contemporary dance, same time. Remember, the schedules are in Panamanian time. And after tomorrow, we're here with K-pop. After tomorrow, urban show every day. So don't miss out on any of the information. Remember, if you have questions, we'll ask in our comment section. And remember, if you're live with us, you have the opportunity to connect directly, ask questions, and we'll of course share this experience with us in real time. So thank you very much. I hope to see you guys. We hope to see you guys very soon all over the world and in our next workshop. So bye-bye. Great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are connected from. Bye-bye.
Bye.